Okay, now we are going to have a fairly brief overview. I'm sorry, we're on the wrong slide there. We're going to have a very brief overview of informal reading inventories. And of course, as part of your assignment for today, you are going to write a list of questions that you have after we go through this. This is just an overview, so we are going to dive a little bit more deeply into the parts of an IRI eventually. And this is what you'll be doing when you work with a student. So what is an informal reading inventory? Well, it's a series of passages that gradually increases in difficulty. It's going to allow you to assess oral reading and comprehension. And this isn't just oral reading fluency. This is actual, you're assessing how well the child reads orally. So you're looking for accuracy, all types of things. And you're actually going to try to find a pattern of mistakes that a child would make. You give this individually. When properly administered and interpreted, the IRI gives you a lot of information that you need as a reading teacher or a special ed teacher working with a student in reading. It takes about 30 minutes. It gives you the student's reading level and an approximate level of language development. It gives you insight into their word analysis skills, their comprehension strategies that they use, background knowledge, work habits, interests, etc. Now, down here at the bottom, teacher created inventories are more valid than commercially produced inventories. Commercially produced is just referring to kind of a packaged set of passages. So a teacher can create his or her own inventory based on materials within the classroom that she uses, or she can purchase the set that's already, the books are already leveled for her or him or her. And it has, some information about the different pieces, etc. So, why do you think that teacher created inventories are more valid than commercially produced inventories? I want you to think about that as we go through this. And as part of your assignment, you're going to be reflecting on that question and giving me some ideas of why you think that might be the case. Remembering what validity means. So, validity has to do with, is this measuring the construct that we are trying to get at with the assessment? Components of an IRI. The two major components are graded word lists and graded passages. So the word lists consist of separate lists of 10 to 20 words, and the range of level moves from pre-primer through 8th or 12th grade typically. A common list would be the Dolch word list. You might have heard of that before, but it's a DOLCH. It's a set of word lists. You can Google it and typically find the actual lists online. The graded passages, it's a series of these text selections that you're going to grade after the student reads them aloud. And these begin at the pre-primer level and go up through higher grades as well. So let's look at the actual reading levels of students. The primary purpose of an IRI is to obtain information about where you're going to place a student as far as reading groups or, remediation groups, that sort of thing. The teacher needs to know what level of material is going to produce the most optimum results. It's very crucial for low achieving readers. Um, Typically in general education, children who are low achieving readers are regularly given texts and reading materials that are just too difficult for them, which leads to frustration, and they are not able to improve upon their skills when they're given materials that frustrate them, they shut down, etc. The IRI actually yields 4 levels. We have independent, instructional, frustration, and then listening capacity. Independent level is the level at which students can read on their own independently without any help from teachers, parents, peers, etc. In the independent level, a child will recognize at least 99% of the words, and the comprehension is nearly perfect. Um, and actually, I'm sorry, this should be 95 here. So make a notation here. Comprehension, 95%. That's going to be lower than your word recognition just because word recognition has to do with decoding and sight words and recognizing the words, and comprehension has to do with being able to take that information and make sense of it. So make sure you change that to 95 when you're taking notes here. At the instructional level, students can read at least 95% of the words. So if you had a 100 word passage, those students would be able to read 95 of those words. If you think about it the other way, they would not be able to read 5 words of this text. They can recall at least 75% of what they've read. That's your comprehension. If given instructional help here, they can read with confidence and competence here. So the instructional level is what is the material, the level of materials that you will want to use when you're actually teaching new skills to students and you're helping them through, and you're working on their, decoding and word recognition skills and that sort of thing. At the frustration level, the material is just too difficult. So students can't read it and make sense of it, even if they have someone there helping them. They will miss at least 10 words out of 100. They will not know 10 words out of 100 words. This 90% here seems a little high at first, maybe to you. But one thing you can do to check on this would be, or to help yourself understand this, go to your most, complicated textbook that you have, pick out a passage of 100 words, and if you look at a page, 100 words is not even half of a page. 100 words is fairly short passage, typically a paragraph in a textbook. And think about if you did not know at all 10 of those words, and typically the 10 words you don't know would be the 10 most complicated words. And the most complicated words sometimes are the most important words, or those key vocabulary words. Would you be able to understand what you read? Would you be frustrated? Probably so. And so at this point, a child will only understand about half of what they read. Now, listening capacity is a little bit different. Once a student has reached the frustration level, the teacher will read inventory selections aloud in order to assess the ability of the student to um, understand when actual reading is not a factor. So the highest level at which the student can understand about 75% of the material that is read would be the listening capacity. So there are several different leveling strategies for books. Some books come in neat little packages already leveled for us. If you have seen Ames Web used in the classrooms where you've observed, that's very similar. Okay, that measures oral reading fluency, and you can actually use those passages if the teacher in your classroom where you'll be placed uses that regularly. So word lists. This is basically it just provides you a starting point for administering the graded passages. These are going to be lists of common words, and you will actually be testing students' ability to recognize these words immediately. So that's testing, the automaticity. Do they have these words in their sight word vocabulary already? Or are they going to have to sound them out piece by piece, phoneme by phoneme? Um, so you're going to test it automatically by having some cards where you can show the word very briefly and then hide it. And then after you go through the list, you're going to allow the students to attempt to read these words given an unlimited amount of time. So then you can actually assess their strategy use. Are they using their strategies for sounding out words? Are they using the rules that they've learned, etc.? So this immediate test we call a flash test, and then the second column would be untimed. And I will show you some examples of this eventually. Now the passages. The inventory begins with the reading passage of the reading of the oral passage that's at the one level below the student's last perfect performance on the flash portion of this word list test. So you're going to move through levels of these lists, and the one where the student last had a perfect score, that would be, you would drop one level below that to start the reading passages. And the students are going to read these at sight. They're not going to be allowed to look at it, beforehand. And before the student reads, you're going to explain why you're giving them this test. And here's just a little brief example of what you could say. And there is a copy of this PowerPoint presentation on Oaks. So you would say something to that effect. I'm not going to read it for you. So we will dive deeply into each of those pieces of the IRI a little bit later in the class, but they're not as complicated as you might think. It's fairly quick and fairly simple to administer. And the time that you spend face-to-face with the student is going to be a lot less than the time you spend actually analyzing that data that you collect when you're with the student. So we're going to talk more about this, and hopefully this has maybe eased a little bit of your anxiety about this particular assignment. I will see you all next week, and be on the lookout for your assignment.